Hey, this is Steve with Dabble Lab, and this is a multi-part series that Roger Brogan and I are doing on converting Alexa skills to Bixby capsules. And specifically, we are, or have been, mostly Roger, has been converting the hurricane tracker skill that I did a while back to a Bixby capsule. And so we're using this as an opportunity to learn along the way and record what we find as we go. So with that, Roger, how are you doing on this? How's it going?
Doing pretty good, Steve. We've got, I would say, about feature parity as far as the commands and utterances that the tool works with, or that specifically the Bixby capsule works with here as far as the language model. So that's pretty good. It's also good that we don't have any active storms. I'm not going to wish hurricanes on anyone just so I can get test data. But so I've mocked up a few sample storms and finished implementing the distance to zip code calculations. So.
Okay.
We can hop over and demo some of that, and then we can talk about some of the design decisions that I made. And we've got a couple of private submissions available for testing, so we're getting ready to submit to the marketplace, and we can take a look at some of the metadata that we have to set up for that, and talk about, since I've worked in the IDE for a while, give some of my opinions on the tool. It's definitely got some clever features. So
Awesome.
why don't I just go ahead and share my main screen here. Actually, we're going to share screen 2. Works. All right, can you see it?
Got it.
Okay, so when we get the little device emulator here, and I've got to restart my session here, kind of the basic stuff. Update on Hurricane Amy. It's going to say that it's just going to echo the name back and give some latitude and longitude in the movement. Need to fix the UI. Obviously, I don't want this whole thing just truncated here, but if we hop over to the debugger, we can see the whole plan and the whole result here. So Hurricane Amy is located, latitude and longitude 26, -81, moving north at 15 miles per hour. Okay, so that's what's going on with that. And if we do some different ones, like, let's see if the voice is working here too. My zip code is 33540. My zip code is 33540. I'll hit the O's.
Oh.
Subtleties and difficulties in language, right? I'll pick that up.
That worked.
All right. My zip is 66515. There we go. Still getting some errors here, but there we go. Hurricane Roger's 1243. If we get so that's up, zip codes up by me. If we pick zip codes down by you, they should be not 1,000 miles away, but
Okay.
143. Oh, this is complaining about history. This does this sometimes when you recompile it and don't reset the button up there. But if we take a look at some of these, we can see that it goes through a different input. It still pulls out the context and gets the token matches, for the zip, pushes that in, and then we get that coming into the value here as the zip code concept, and then we get update by zip. And so made some little differences here into this. We've got, that was the result here. If we jump into the function, we'll see that we changed the request a little bit. We now actually have, this is the call out here to the get distance from zip to lat long, right? And that's just a little Azure function app that I wrote to do the calculation. And you might be wondering why I did that. Well, we will take a look at that in the code in just a minute. And then of course, here's our result for this. So let me hop back over to the code and we can look at some changes that I made in the main tracker here. So this is the track storm by name. Let me get down to the get update by zip. So inside of here, what I was using prior was actually this, I think, do I have an, yeah, what I was using prior is I was using just basically like a hard-coded zip code. But what I decided to do to get the input here was to go in here and just move this calculation out into an Azure function, and we're just putting in that, you know, it's going to get JSON back. We put in the zip code, the storm latitude and longitude, and this is the little gem that I came across here, where it's got built-in functionality for handling the secrets. It's a you know well-known best practice not to put, you know, any secrets, passwords, keys, or anything like that in source code control, especially Git, because they never technically go away. Once you commit them, they're in history if you know how to search through that. So you have to do a little Git surgery to get rid of those, and those would obviously be a security issue. But they've got this little library that built in to go out and grab secrets. They've also got another one for config, which is pretty clever. But they give you then a special place out on the developer portal where you can go and put in your settings. And
this includes like environment variables or secrets and.
yeah, so if we pop over here to the Bixby Developer Center, and we can take a look at Team Dabble Lab here, and underneath here we've got our capsule. So we've got our Hurricane capsule, and this is really an interesting setup too here, because what we've got here is we've got this section for config and secrets, and it's, you know, obfuscated right on the screen here, and we've got a separate one for configuration. And I was like, wait a minute. So I just put this secret out here on the web somewhere, and then I'm making a call to a local JavaScript function here, and this is magically getting the correct secret. And I had to do a little bit of double take on that, but it is. But remember that this development environment is not really running this locally. It's packaging it up and shipping it off to the Bixby server. So it has access to that up there, and it's a pretty seamless experience, which is pretty clever. And
super nice.
The other thing that was really clever is when I had just it in here as the actual secret, because even though we're not supposed to do that, we typically start doing that, at least for testing purposes, just because it's easier to find any issues. The IDE flagged it as a warning. Like,
really?
We think you have a secret in your source code, and that's a no-no, right? So that kind of led me to, okay, it's nagging me. Let me see what their secret management is. So that's
like security linting.
It is. It's actually like that. So
yeah, that's cool.
So that was really clever, and that works really well. And then we get the distance, and then we kind of just, you know, I update the distance in the response here, and then the rest of the stuff is just kind of preparing what it's going to send back. And I'm still using my little you know, fake data for storms here to pull in some fake data, but we'll actually replace this with a call to an actual URL once we go live, right, where you know, it'll report information about the active storms. Now, just a couple of side comments. You know, I look at this thing at first, and I was like, wow, yet another IDE for me to learn. You know, I use Android Studio, I use Visual Studio, I use Visual Studio Code. Just, you know, whatever kind of development language you want. If there's an IDE, I've probably used it. And there's a little bit of IDE fatigue, if you will. It's like, you know, switching between, you know, unless you map all the keystrokes together, then you've got different key continuations for debugging and things like that. And I thought to myself, like, why did they go through the effort? I mean, they've put a significant amount of effort in creating a really nice IDE and going for a nice developer experience. That's evident. It's pretty polished. But then when you look at it in certain things, you know, my opinion right now in the IDE world, IDEs have almost become a commodity a long time ago. You've got open source, you know, Eclipse projects. You've got
Yeah.
Visual Studio Code is open source, and there's huge environments and huge, you know, kind of communities built around all these different plugins. So at first glance, I was like, well, you know, they really could have just started with a Visual Studio Code plugin and added all of the code here, and then they would have been able to leverage the existing rich JavaScript features with, you know, IntelliSense and
Mhm.
completion, and without having to rewrite all of that stuff. So I'm not quite sure why they didn't choose to go that route. Maybe they wanted to have much more control over
Is this
communication.
based on something like Atom or like the, you
It
know?
looks to be, just from the style, probably like an Electron application
Yeah.
would be my guess, but I'm not sure. I don't know if that's stated anywhere. I don't believe it's open source. I did actually get an automatic update today, so this is the latest version as of, yeah,
Mm.
6.13. But you
I mean,
know,
it looks great. I mean, I haven't spent a lot of time with it other than just going through the, you know, the sample uh,
it
stuff.
does.
Editing it.
It is.
I think it's really nice.
Yeah, it's great. It's polished. But you know, the one thing that's odd to me, and maybe this is just the execution model, is I haven't, maybe you can somewhere, but I haven't figured out a way to set just breakpoints and step through the code line by line, right?
It's-
So if that's on purpose, then that was another good reason to remove as much logic as you can from the actual capsules and just have it a quick API call, right? Because then you can do, you know, you can switch over to say like Visual Studio Code, which this is
yeah,
the,
I was going to say, out of curiosity, then you're switching IDEs to do the function code, the back?
right. So
Yeah.
this is the, yeah, this is the Visual Studio version, and or Visual Studio Code version of just the get distance from lat long
Yeah.
function up on Azure. So, you know, and the development experience in here, from, you know, setting breakpoints and looking at values and registers and, you know, and stuff like that is what I think just a lot of people would be used to.
Mhm.
It's a little bit a different experience to kind of execute all your code, hope for the best, and then come back and then look at the debugger, which this debugger, by the way, is also awesome from as far as a snapshot of what happened. I mean, it's very extensive. You can see the exact plan it went through. You can see all of the variables and everything like that. But a lot of times when you're trying to figure out behavior, you can catch it line by line, like, oh yeah, like that decisional structure there, but no, that's the wrong
Yeah.
decision, or I'm off by one, right? So that's, and I don't really, I'm not trying to make it as a complaint. I'm just really curious as to why they didn't leverage uh, an existing one. And I am also curious, maybe more of an architectural question for the team is I guess, you know, if this is running remotely on their servers, implementing a remote debugger is not impossible, right? Because you could do that in Azure.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
the implementation of it is certainly not trivial. So maybe that's something that they've got on their feature backlog, maybe, and just didn't make it into this. But it's something that I think would really make it fully complete, unless their answer is no. You know, we're never going to do that. Write most of your heavy lifting in an API, and, you know, don't use so much of our compute. You're limited on that anyway, right? So that could be a valid route as well. But anyway, those were a few things that, you know, after using the tool for a while, I thought were pretty interesting. And I do have any other kind of
Yeah, I'm
comments?
curious to see. So I know I have access to the project and everything, but
Mhm.
haven't done any updates collaboratively with you on it. So I'd be curious to see how the workflow works as you get multiple people working on one, you know, one code base.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, just see how that all comes together. Or is this something where you will likely have, and just haven't gotten into it enough to see like the, continuous integration environment, how that works. And, I got to imagine like more complex capsules, you would have multiple developers on it, I'm assuming.
Right.
So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all this stuff works as we get deeper into it. What
Yeah,
about,
that is a great question, because if they're running this in the server, do I get my own sandbox for each execution here, right? Because let's say you're building on the same code base and you're using the same name, because this namespace and capsule name is got to be unique, right, for testing. So I'm really curious as to um, how that would work. Like if you were making changes, and if would they step on my changes, right? I wouldn't think so. I'm guessing that we each get kind of a sandbox per execution, but that would be still pretty interesting to find out. Wouldn't be a difficult experiment to find out for sure. But
yeah, like something like with complex Alexa skills, we're typically using like CloudFormation and CodeStar to manage the whole build and deployment and testing process. So
mhm.
I'd love to, as we get further down the road, just kind of experiment with how that might be replicated in the capsule world of capsules.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. I mean, I don't know what their CI/CD testing testing on device story is yet, but like for example, on the like the bot framework, that's all fully integrated with Azure DevOps,
Yeah,
CI/CD pipeline, and you can run your tests and things like
yeah.
that. So that would definitely be a curiosity as to see how that's going to go. And
My
obviously
guess
then,
is it's probably here. Just looking at everything else that's done,
yeah.
it's
And like I
probably
said, it's,
just a learning curve thing.
yeah, yeah.
But
And there's, speaking of that too, there's a whole other aspect that I was poking around in the documentation that looks really interesting, which is their story editor, where you can essentially kind of write the story or the communication between the capsule and the user, and it looks like it generates some execution plans out of that. So that's something
oh,
that,
really? I haven't come across that yet. That's super
yeah,
cool. It's kind of a design tool, like a
I
conversation.
think so. I just barely touched the surface on the documentation, and I was like, wow, if this does what I think it does, this is also really pretty cool, because like I said, I'm the biggest fan of the way that they're doing this this dispatching, right? And it's evident in the way that let me hop back over. It's evident here in the training that you just have this capability to map all of these, like the input and essentially like the goal, and then it figures out what it's supposed to do. And so you kind of got this declarative, this is what I need to happen. And
Yeah,
then you don't have all of those, switch statements or case statements or, a bunch of if else's trying to figure out what the intent is and then what that's supposed to go execute. And I think when you get more complex conversations, that this model will really shine, because that's when those things get out of hand, when you've got nested if else's and loops.
yeah,
And
yeah,
there's a lot of attempts to manage that in other frameworks by using the idea of a dialogue library with kind of stacks of dialogues, and you kind of pop and push things on the stack. But that's still, in my mind, that's still a little bit low level. Like you still have to spend a lot of time kind of planning that, and then the cancel routes and things like that. So, more complex bots, if you will, or voice assistants will definitely require a lot of essentially like navigation logic. And if this is their answer for that, I think it's very clever. So
yeah. I mean, this is it's the building is different. So I mean, I know a lot of what I've run into in building conversational apps is the tools that are out there that weren't, you know, necessarily thinking about conversational apps when they were built. Require some shoehorning at times. So this might be, and without having spent a lot of time with it yet, this might be, this might be great. I like the idea of all contained, sort of Xcode-ish, like
Mhm.
where, yeah, you're not using some open source IDE that you might be familiar with, but kind of everybody's using the same IDE. So when you're looking for help and documentation and that kind of stuff, it's all consistent, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, I wouldn't mind if this was open source, and then I don't know how difficult it would be to have like a Visual Studio Code plugin to do these particular things. But there's a massive, community of developers that have done that type of thing, because I think to get maybe a little bit more developer adoption, developers can get almost religious in their adoption of IDEs, right? So, you
Yeah,
make someone
yeah,
use another IDE, and so a lot of people may not like that. Um, I wasn't necessarily jazzed about learning another IDE,
yeah, yeah.
um, but it's definitely cool. But you miss things like your keyboard shortcuts and
What
like
about just themes? I know that's little, but
yeah.
just I'm assuming there's like dark and light themes. But
Yeah, that type of stuff. Like the weird things where it didn't support the backtick syntax for JavaScript for those, backtick screen
oh, it didn't
strings. No, it
for like
recognized that
template
as
for like JavaScript templating.
yeah, the little backtick string delimiter, so that you can use just kind of your interpolated strings, I think it's called, where you can put your variables in there and it just
Oh, that's
automatically maps them out.
interesting. So is there a version of JavaScript that this supports or doesn't support, or is it?
This is ECMAScript 2017, so I would be shocked if the backtick isn't in there, but this editor recognizes it as an invalid character. So,
Uh,
I mean, if we just hop over and, we use one like this, let me make it actually, it would be valid JavaScript, but, if we did
I use that
something
all
like
the time.
this, I know I had to replace them all.
Hmm.
So
Oh, but, yeah.
illegal character, all right? So not really illegal character, but
What if you remove everything before it? I mean, is it illegal because you're trying to concatenate with it?
uh, yeah, nope,
Nope.
nope, just doesn't like that
Yeah,
character.
that's
Because I had concatenation with them all over the place, but I had to do a little. Oh, and then I found after that there's no find and replace either that I could find anyway. So that was also then painful to manually go find all the backticks and replace them with this, and then this more clunky syntax with the concatenating the strings. But anyway, little things like that, right? That's
yeah.
the type. That's the type of stuff that.
All of the joys of dabbling, right? Learning.
Yeah, but that's the type of thing that you would get with, you know, an editor out of the box that's JavaScript aware, right? So that was one of the things I was thinking when I was doing that, is that, why did they end up doing it this way when they could have just added to? Because I mean, there's a lot of secret sauce in here too, I'm sure. Like, I mean, so if they don't want to open source it, that's fine. But you could have a closed source plugin that had all of the Bixby magic behind it.
Is there a command line version? I mean, could you develop in another environment and just package from the command line? Do you know?
I have not seen any of those tools as of yet. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but they're not
Okay,
really
I was
obvious at
just
that
curious.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if this is a requirement.
I would think so, because I mean, remember, you have to be actually logged in to even launch this studio, so it has to know who you are and what account, I guess, and what developer account you're
Yeah,
associated
but I wonder if there was a command line tool that did that sort of, because I would think you would only need to be logged in to package and deploy, right?
with. That,
Um, but
yeah, I mean, that would be one would think so, but I'm not sure. Not sure.
all right, well, Put it on our list of things to,
List of questions. Yeah.
yeah. Uh,
But even so, like my comments about moving most of the code out of this, and we mentioned this before, architecturally, that's the right way to go. Also, anyway, I
yeah.
mean, this
Yeah. I
really
agree.
is just the UI layer, and
Yeah.
any heavy lifting, so to speak, should be in an API, and it should be in a really fast performant. And I'm guessing like just one call, because even just a single call out to my little zip code service, I could tell uh, an extra little delay there, right? So um, I think that the model that we'll end up with that will be most successful is to finish porting the rest of this into might as well just combine the zip code API and this, is to just take either a zip code, a storm name, or nothing, and then get the current forecast, update on that storm, or distance from current storms to your location. So
Yeah. So you did the email. So you did the opposite of what I did. So I set up the API for the zip code lookup, which I guess doesn't make sense, right? It would just make sense to have it all in a single API. Pass
well,
in.
yeah, I mean, but as a quick start, that was low hanging fruit. So I get why you did that. That's why I ended up writing one too. But now that I've got it, um,
Yeah.
enough to just kind of add to it, and just essentially grab the rest of this code here. That's really just and this, if anyone's looking at this in horror and seeing all this code duplication, yes, we know it needs refactored. I would not leave the code like this, but this was quick and dirty copy and paste, just to get kind of the logic working and kind of understand the
Yeah.
code base, right? But yeah, this is easy enough to refactor, which I would do with the API version, and then just kind of send back the essentially the text at this point. And one other thing, to get it to submit, there were some other warnings about various metadata things that we needed to add. So we added some additional info into the capsule here. So we need some search keywords and some privacy policy. We got a nice little icon asset. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but we have, let me see when this was running here. Oh, look at that nice little icon right there. Oh, hurricane
That's
tracker.
awesome.
Yeah. So, and that's picked up from the metadata, and it guides you step by step. If you take anything out, and at the top level, there's actually the capsule thing here too. So you have to have an ID, a version, store sections, and some runtime flags. If you take any of this stuff out, um, it's going to give you a warning. And it's going to say, hey, you're missing a section here. You're not going to be able to do that, right? And there is IntelliSense in here for certain things, right? So if we start typing, I think it was like, yeah, education and reference,
Yeah, that's
it
nice.
pops up, and we've got the code completion there. So
For
it's
like targets there, that's the language locale, right? The
yeah,
Bixby mobile. Yeah.
mobile US, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's another question is localization. So if you're doing a capsule for different languages, I guess you add those to resources there. Yeah.
yeah, we've got the base right here, and then they've got folders under there for the various languages, right?
Got
So
it.
you can have, like for example, this is I think this is like the must understand utterances, something like that.
Yeah.
The hints, and then yeah, capsule info, which is language specific for the different keywords and dispatch name, and then yeah, this is the top level capsule flags. So, but yeah, this is
Excellent.
yeah, it's
Now
pretty.
we'll move on to beta testing. Maybe we'll cover that in the next episode.
Yeah, we could certainly do that. We could, yeah, get this on an actual device, which it should be ready with the private versions are published in the private testing area in the team. But let's see, where was Developer Central? Yeah, up in here, our little versions here. We've got current release. No available versions, but it should have for the private version here. Let's see, where is it? This is dev. Oh, in configuration mode too. This is dev versus prod. So you can also have your secrets and configuration different for like the prod version versus
Yeah,
dev.
that's nice.
So that's a little bit of understanding, you know, CI/CD right there. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, the other publish button, I guess, is from here where we can see the submission history here, the current version of this. So we do have one published. I think this is one of the screens you get to. It gives you the actual revision there, something about loading that or overriding the revision compiler or something like that. But yeah, so
Good.
it should be Bixby Mobile.
Yeah, so that'll be that'll be our next episode is testing and deploying, because by then we should have this thing. The Bixby store is up and running now. So right, so we as
Yeah,
of just
yeah.
this past week, so it
We,
is brand new.
it is timely, right? We need to get this thing polished up and get it in there. So
Getting close. Nice work. It's looking
very close.
really good.
Thanks.
Really good. All right, then why don't we call this a session, and then we'll come back next time and cover deployment and testing, or testing and deployment, beta testing and deployment.
Yeah, sounds good.
Plan?
Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. Thanks, Roger.
All right, thanks, Steve.
We'll see you.